Hi everyone, I hope you're all having a great week. So I'm back on camera this week because I want to touch base with you on a couple of things. Before I do that, I want to start off by saying that I truly appreciate and love getting your comments every week. It's such a lovely chance for me to connect with you all, and I really appreciate that you make the time to do that. That being said, I also feel it's important for me to tell you that I do my very best to reply to comments within a 24-hour time frame, and usually that is easy for me to do from Monday to Friday. I really do try to stay on top of that no matter what is going on in my life. But there are times where I'm extremely busy, or I'm not feeling well, or maybe I'm on vacation, or maybe there's something else going on where it can be a little bit more challenging for me to do so. So I want to let you know that if you haven't heard from me within that 24-hour time frame, I do promise to get back to you as soon as possible. I have a couple of ways of getting messages from you. As creators, we have what's called YouTube Creator Studio, which is a wonderful platform. I love working on it, and I get most of your messages, especially new messages that come to me. I get them right away. And so these messages are very easy for me to respond to because I can find them more easily. For whatever reason, if I reply to one of your messages and then you reply to the reply I sent you, those messages that you send me, those secondary messages, and I say secondary for lack of a better word, I guess, they don't go to Creator Studio. I don't really know why. That's kind of crazy to me, but for now, that's what's going on. So I have to go a few different steps further in order to look for these comments, and that makes it a little bit more challenging for me to do so. It's not impossible for me to do so. I do try to get to these comments, but typically you might see that it takes a little bit more time for me to reply to these messages, and that's the reason why. And what I love about our really beautiful little community that we've created here on YouTube is the fact that if you're asking a question about a product or something, there's a chance someone else in our community might have already used this product and may be able to offer you an answer. I want to be able to offer you that answer, but if someone else comes up, reads your comment, and they have the knowledge and they can share that with you, then I think it's a wonderful thing that people do communicate with one another in this way. So I'm really thankful for people, who read the comment section and see when someone's not getting an instant reply and they have the knowledge and they share that information. I think that's fantastic. I think it's a wonderful way for us to bond as a creative community and to stay connected with one another. But even if people do send you a reply, I'll always read what's been, written in the comments, and I'll chime in if I feel like I need to add anything. Now, with that in mind, I should fill you in on the fact that I was just on vacation for the last 2 weeks. It's kind of a crazy thing that I had a vacation planned in the midst of everything that's been going on in our lives. But I'll tell you what, that vacation came to me at exactly the right time. I thought at first that maybe I should put that off because I was feeling really stressed about our upcoming move and having to pack and having to keep things going on YouTube. But it was so good for me to get away with my husband and with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law. We had a little family trip and it was wonderful. And so during those 2 weeks, even though I was trying my best to stay on top of messages that came to me, especially the ones that showed up in Creator Studio, there might have been a little bit more of a lag time. I'm not wanting to hide the fact that I was on vacation, but I am mindful of the fact that we are sharing information online. And though I know most of you are super caring and super supportive of me, and I know you would not wish any ill will to come my way, I also don't know who else might be watching. And so sometimes I'm a little bit more weary of sharing certain information online And I think it's important for us to be careful of what we share online, because that's number one, exercising good boundaries, and number two, just being mindful that not everyone out there has good intentions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that's for whatever reason. And I'm not trying to judge anyone who is in a desperate situation and may feel it necessary for whatever reason, whether it be to put food on the table for their kids or whatever, to do things that are sort of desperate, I guess, to make money. But I also don't want to be a victim to that. So I do things to protect myself, and that's one of the reasons why I don't always openly share what's going on immediately in my life. But I do want you to know that even if I'm on vacation, I am still checking messages every once in a while. I am the kind of person who, as much as I love what I do, and I love art, and I love connecting with people, I work to live. I do not live to work. So that means that I do make time for myself where I don't check my messages, and I don't check emails, and I don't make it a priority to do that, because I feel it's also a priority for me to take care of myself. And I really hope that you can do that as well. So that means that on the weekends, for instance, or maybe if I am on vacation and it's just for a short amount of time, it may take me more than 24 hours to get to my messages. It might take, let's say, 48 hours. If I'm really feeling like I need that downtime, I give myself that, because ultimately I'm responsible for taking care of me. And so I want to make sure I do a good job of that, because I want to be able to keep doing the things that I do that I really enjoy. And that is to keep doing what I'm doing here on YouTube and connecting with you. So on the subject of my vacation, it was a really wonderful 2 weeks with family, and I want to share some of the pictures from my trip with you, but I'll save that to the very end of the video in case some of you are really not interested in seeing what I did on vacation. And so that way you can get right to my art video and leave the viewing, I guess, when you feel like you've had your fill. And if you are, however, interested in seeing where we went and what we were up to, I am super happy to share that with you. We had, like I said, a wonderful vacation, and I feel so blessed and thankful to have had that time with my family. So now to my video. This week's video is a video on a geologic abstract, and I won't lie, I had started creating something else. It was a textured piece, and I kind of liked it at first, and then I wasn't so sure I liked it, and I had to start it before we left, and I came back to it after we left, and I just wasn't feeling it anymore. And so I didn't scrap it. I have kept it. I don't know that it's ever gonna come to fruition as a video on YouTube, but there's a chance I might try to modify it and see if I can save it. So I'm not throwing it out because I don't like giving up on my paintings. But I decided to go a different direction. And since I was in a beautiful, beautiful country with beautiful landscapes and lovely geology, I decided that this week I was going to work on a geologic abstract. And being that we are at the beginning of the fall season, I felt inspired to use colors that are fall-like to me. So without any further ado, I will let you move on to my video, and I hope you enjoy it. So thank you for making the time to listen to my little blurb. If you have any questions or comments, again, please always feel free to contact me. I always love hearing from you. I hope you enjoy the video. Often when I'm starting to work on an abstract painting, especially geologic abstracts, I like to start off by drawing in some guidelines using just a pencil. Most of my regular pencils are packed away, so I'm using a mechanical pencil for this, but I'm just really lightly drawing in some guidelines, giving myself a little something to work with as I'm applying the paint, but the lines for the most part will not be visible in the end, and it's just really to help me lay my paint down.
As long as I'm being careful not to apply too much pressure as I'm laying these lines down, the lines will be very light and the paint will mostly brush them away. If I did want to be really committing and work with something more defined and not give myself any room for changes, then I could press a little bit harder to make the lines more visible. But I like to give myself the freedom to make changes along the way and to sort of let the painting tell me what it wants to become. I didn't do a super good job cleaning my brush the last time I used it, so there's still a little bit of paint in my bristles. And I'm okay with this because it's gonna go along with the sort of color palette I have in mind for this painting. And it really just is a light wash. So without adding any color, what I was intending on doing there is just come in with a wet brush and add some water to my paper. And I'm gonna start adding color. I'm kind of going with what's on my palette right now. I wasn't really necessarily intending to go in this direction, but there was a little bit of that opera pink mixed with magenta on my palette, and I thought, hey, why not? I am going to be using some fall light colors, especially here in the Northeast. We have reds usually show up in our fall colors, and so I don't mind adding a little bit of those reddish tones in my painting. And as you know, this is my first layer of paint, so chances are it's going to change quite a bit along the way. Sometimes I have ideas on what I would like to do, and other times those ideas are a little bit more blurry, if you will, and I'm not 100% sure what direction I'm heading into. I do know I want to get fall colors, and I sort of always like to start off with a very light wash of whatever. So fall colors, well, there could be some green mixed in there, some yellows, some reds, maybe a little bit of brown. So I'm laying down some of these colors right from the get-go. I'm letting them mix in together. As you can probably see, I'm really not applying any intense pigment to my paper right now because I really want to give myself a chance to intensify the colors as I go along. And what's going to happen is my intuition is going to start to kick in and tell me which direction I want to head into. And it's going to be a little bit more clear as I go along. But when I'm first starting out, sometimes it's really not all that clear. So honestly, applying very light washes of color when I'm first starting off is a good way for me to get the ball rolling on the process without adding too much pressure of committing to colors to be in the final artwork, if you will, because those light washes can easily be added to as I'm going along. And as long as I keep the washes very light, I can change the colors as I am progressing in my painting process. So blues aren't necessarily very fall-like, if you will, but what they do is mix very well with other more earthy colors to create greens and darker browns or darker reds. And so I am adding the blues in part because I had them on my palette, and in part because I know they will mix well with the colors that I'm going to keep using in my painting. It's always a little bit of a dance for me. I start adding color and I start using my brush strokes and adding marks on my paper, and my intuition always kicks in at some point and says, why don't you try this? And I love working this way. I prefer not having a very set plan or a very set idea of what my painting should look like. In fact, I almost prefer not having a plan because then the possibilities are really endless. When I start to add color like this, I don't typically like to necessarily work with my mop brush, but honestly, most of my paintbrushes are packed. So I'm kind of working with what I have. And the other thing that I'm kind of discovering as I'm doing this is that, of course, my mop brush holds on to a lot of water. So since I'm trying to add some really light washes of color, it's kind of perfect for what I'm doing right now. My paper is still damp at this point, and I'm going to come in with some fine-grained table salt, and I've decided I'm going to add the salt only to the areas where I'll have my quote-unquote rock formations. I'm not 100% sure how the salt will react. It kind of really changes depending on how much water is on my paper, where I apply it, and a number of different factors. So I'm not holding on to the idea that whatever marks the salt will leave are going to be left on the final part of the painting, but it's giving me a chance to start adding a little bit of texture, visual texture, if you will. Once the paper was completely dry, I rubbed off the salt using a piece of paper towel, and now I'm going to start adding some more color to the background. I'm going to try to work around the shapes that I've created with my pencil and also with the salt. I like the marks that the salt left, but I'm not 100% crazy with that blob that's kind of left in there. So I'm going to try to work on creating a little bit more texture, adding some more salt, and I'm going to really focus on just adding color to the areas where I'd like to see some more texture, visual texture, and see if I can do away with those that kind of like stark demarcation. Like it really, I mean, I did it. I added salt just to that center part of the painting, so of course it repelled the water and the paint pigment in that area. I guess I just wasn't really wanting it to leave quite such a stark demarcation, or I don't really know what I'm saying. I'm not really liking the shape. Basically, that's exactly what it is. I'm not really liking that shape that's been created, so I'm going to work around it. I'm going to fix it and use a little bit more pigment and some salt and see what else I can create. I really like the colors I've added in the background so far, and since I don't want them to blend into the rock formations, if you will, in the middle, I'm going to let the background completely dry before I start intensifying the colors in the middle part of my painting. I like the fact that the textures that were initially created with the salt at the beginning of my painting process are still visible, though a lot more subtle because I painted over them. Now I'm coming in after having added some more color, and I'm going to add a little bit more salt on top of those colors. And you'll see that there will be some marks left by the salt, but the marks will be a little bit more subtle, and I really like that. I like using the salt at different times in the painting because it really kind of reacts differently depending on how much water is on the paper, how much pigment's on the paper. So many different factors can influence the effect of the salt on the paper. And so it's so much fun for me to experiment with that. And I'm encouraging you, I guess, to do the same because there's so many possibilities with the salt. It is kind of a little bit unpredictable. You don't know exactly for a fact exactly what's going to be created, but that's part of the beauty and magic of working with the salt with watercolors. Okay, now it's time to make those lovely colors that are in the background of my painting pop by adding some contrast with some black ink. If you know me just at least a little bit, especially when it comes to painting, and especially if when it comes to geologic abstracts, there's definitely going to be some gold involved. So I've pulled out my Star Gold. I'm first applying it with my micro mini brush, and then I'm coming in with a dry filbert and I'm helping to spread that paint along so that it doesn't leave a very stark line. I want it to be a little bit more blended in the shape. And I find that using a dry, clean brush for this works really, really well. In this case, gold was definitely the final touch, and now I'm ready for my big reveal. So it's time for me to take off the tape and have a closer look at the painting. It was a simple little painting to create, and right now that's exactly what I need to keep things as simple as possible. I love how the gold works against these fall colors. I love how the colors themselves blend so well together, and those little subtle details, those little marks left by the salt, seem to fit just perfectly. It also always blows my mind how adding black or a contrasting color can make simple details pop more. It really was a joy for me to create this painting, and it was fun to get back from vacation and to have a simple project like this one to get me going and to sort of help me work through the stress of what's currently going on in my life. As promised, this is the point in time where I'm going to transition to showing you some pictures and little videos from my vacation. But for those of you moving on, I want to say a great big thank you for watching, and thank you for joining me on my creative journey. For those of you who are sticking around, I am happy to share that 2 weeks ago on September 15th, we left for Norway. And it was one of my favorite vacations so far. I've been very fortunate to travel to a lot of beautiful places on this planet, but Norway by far exceeded my expectations. It was like oohing and awing almost at every turn. There were so many beautiful landscapes. The people were incredibly friendly, and we got to learn a lot about the culture and history of the place. And to have a chance to do this with the love of my life and my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, I mean, it felt like a real true blessing. And I cannot express how much I feel thankful to have had this opportunity. We got to drive the world's longest tunnel, and that was a complete surprise to us. We weren't expecting anything like that, but it turns out that Norway is a country that has a lot of tunnels because, of course, it has a lot of mountains, it has a lot of fjords. It's just an amazing place. I mean, the different types of geology, the different types of mountains, I mean, it was just breathtaking. And we drove a lot. We did quite a bit of the south part of the country, and then we traveled to like the middle part of the country and then headed up north. So we did a lot of driving while we were there, but we had so much fun doing it. The weather wasn't the greatest, but you know what? When you're having fun and you choose to see things in a positive light, the rain really didn't bother us all that much. It was actually quite nice and refreshing to have some cool weather and an excuse to make some time to go visit museums and spend some time indoors when the weather wasn't the greatest, and then lots of time outdoors, whether or not it was raining, to explore the beautiful countryside. As you know, I'm passionate about art, I'm passionate about people, I'm passionate about nature, and I'm also really passionate about traveling. And with everything that's happening in our world with climate change, sometimes I feel guilty for having that desire to travel. But ultimately, I do believe that it's not so much that we need to stop traveling, more so that we need to start figuring out ways how to do it differently so that we don't impact our planet so much. Because it is such a beautiful place. And when you look at countries like the one I live in, the one I'm from, and the one I just visited, I mean, there's so much beauty to behold in this world. And there are so many kind and wonderful people out there. And when we travel, we get to know and understand other people better. And we get to appreciate everything our planet has to offer us. And so for me, that's one of the reasons I think it's still very important to continue traveling. But it's important to also be mindful of the impact we have on our planet and to put pressures on our government to force companies to do things differently so that we can protect our planet. Anyway, all this said, I hope you enjoyed my little blurb about Norway. It was a wonderful place to visit, and I am so thankful I get to share some of my pictures with you. Tusen takk, Norge. I loved your country. And if you've stuck around till the end, thank you so much again for joining me this week. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!